I would like to welcome members of the Environment Overview and Scrutiny panel, officers and members of the public in attendance at today's meeting. Welcome to members of the public and press who may be watching the meeting live on YouTube. I'm Councillor Steve Rippon-Swain, Chairman of the Environment Overview and Scrutiny panel. I would remind all participants that this meeting is being broadcast live and will be available for repeat viewings. Please could all councillors follow the council's ground rules for virtual meetings, which have been well circulated. In particular, please use the conversation panel to indicate any request to speak, RTS. I'll be taking recommendations by consensus at this meeting and asking members to use the RTS to indicate if they do not agree with any recommendations. If a vote is required on a particular item, I will call each panel member to vote in turn. In the event of any technical problems, there will be a short adjournment to establish if the fault can be addressed. Please bear with us in these circumstances. If an individual loses connection and the meeting can practically continue with a quorum, it will do so. For the benefit of all participants and those viewing the meeting, I will now call the name of each member of the panel and ask them to identify themselves as being in attendance at this meeting. As I previously mentioned, I'm Councillor Steve Rippon-Swain, Chairman of the meeting. Can I now call on members of the panel, starting with Councillor Anne Bellows.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you, Anne. Councillor Sue Bennison.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you, Sue. Councillor Jeff Blunden.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, present.
Thanks, Jeff. Councillor Alan Glass.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you, Alan. Councillor Andrew Gossage.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Present. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Andrew. Councillor Stephanie Osborne.
Present, Chairman.
Thanks, Stephanie. Councillor Tony Ring. We fear he may not be hearing us. I'll ask once more. Councillor Tony Ring. Yes, the problem persists. I'll move on. Councillor Derek Tipp.
Yes, present, Chairman.
Thank you, Derek. And Councillor Malcolm Wade.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you, Malcolm. Right, on the agenda, there's apologies. So, Democratic Services, have you received any apologies for the meeting today?
There are no apologies today.
Excellent. Item 1 is declarations of interests. Members, do you have any interest to declare? Please could you use the RTS, and I will then ask each member individually to speak. We appear to have no declarations of interest. I'll move on then in that case.
Hang on, Chairman, sorry, you were too quick for me. I was going to do an RTS. My declaration of interest is that I'm a county councillor and we're talking about the waste strategy, and of course the county council is while the NFDC collects the waste, the county council disposes of the waste.
That's right,
but it's
indeed.
Not prejudicial.
I don't think so, Malcolm, but thank you very much anyway. It'll be noted. Right, moving to item 2, public participation. We have one member of the public who is registered to speak, which is actually on the next agenda item. That is Shirley Macy, who's in the lobby, I believe, Karen. As public participation goes first, before we deal with item 3, can I ask Shirley Macy to make her statement, please?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can indeed.
Hello, I'm Shirley, and I live in New Milton. I'm a resident of New Milton, and I would like to thank you for the platform to comment on this agenda. My original comments were sent to Alison Hall a year ago, so I won't be repeating them, and I would like to thank Alison for her suggesting this forum. I have been passionate about the move to wheelie bins ever since moving here 4 years ago from Eastbourne in East Sussex, where wheelie bins were introduced, and during 25 years, the marauding birds and animals disappeared. I have read the agenda and was so impressed with the recycling detail. COVID-19 has highlighted the absolute need for getting rid of curbside plastic sacks. I am so pleased that compost bins will become available, and it's encouraging to know that recycling rates will improve with their use, hopefully. People are averse to composting kitchen waste at home because of encouraging vermin. I realise it will take time for residents to absorb this change in refuse and recycling, but the 21st century beckons and climate change is happening. So to close, there are people I know who don't recycle in this town, so it is very important that education and much clearer instructions, information to each resident is paramount to promote behavioural change in all our habits. And thank you very much for this platform.
Thank you very much, Shirley. Very positive of you. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Right, we'll move on then to the actual item 3, draft waste strategy. And in that respect, I need to ask Chris Noble and or Nicola Plummer to present the report, please.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a double act from myself and Nicola Plummer from my team. So I'm Chris Noble, the Service Manager for Waste and Transport, and Nicola, who's going to deliver some of the slides sort of alongside myself in a moment, is the Project and Performance Officer who works in my team in the Waste and Recycling Service. So I'm just going to share my screen because I've got a couple of slides to just run through just to illustrate some of the key points from the report. So just bear with me a moment. Chairman, if you wouldn't mind just confirming when you can see those slides.
They've just appeared, Chris.
Excellent, thank you very much. So just to confirm, we have several documents that were obviously sent out ahead of today's meeting that hopefully the panel have had a chance to review. So the 3 documents were a covering report, which introduces the sort of draft waste strategy itself. Then we have the draft waste strategy, which is a standalone sort of separate document, and finally an engagement plan, which is Appendix 2 to the cover report, which covers how we're looking to engage with our stakeholders on the draft waste strategy. So I've got some slides to go through, not a huge amount, less than normal, you'll be pleased to hear, but what I wasn't going to do was sort of go through the draft waste strategy in a lot of detail because it is quite a long document, as you'll all appreciate, and hopefully you've had a chance to have a look. And also I'm conscious that I'm sure the panel will want to have plenty of time this afternoon to ask questions and speak about the content of the strategy. So instead, what I'm going to do is focus on a couple of key things from the strategy. So the first one is action 1 from within the report, which relates to the development of a new collection system, which you will agree probably is the most significant sort of action within the strategy, and then talk a little bit about the engagement work that we plan to carry out. So that's going to be the focus of the following slides. So just to cover off the aims and the objectives, these are just pulled directly from the waste strategy, and these have been developed, this aim and the objectives have been developed by the member working group, which has been working on this project for over a year now, and it covers the main requirements of a strategy such as this, talking about cost, environment, compliance with legislation. We feel it encompasses the sort of key elements that the strategy needs to cover. You can take that down into a bit more detail in terms of objectives, and again we think this covers the key things that we want to achieve with our waste and recycling strategy in the New Forest, focusing on carbon, compliance with future legislation, and reducing household waste, as well as increasing the levels of recycling that we have within the district. So, like I said, there are many actions within the waste strategy, but I think you will all probably agree action 1 is probably the most important, and it relates to what the frontline service could look like in the future. And just to be clear, the action 1 is to carry out further work on the option that you see on the slide. And I shall talk further about what that further work means on the next slide. But just to briefly go through the graphic you see on the screen, that's a summary of the sort of preferred option, if you like, that we propose in Action 1 of the draft waste strategy. Covers the key elements of the frontline service, which is the food waste separate collection, a change in the way we do recycling with paper and card collected separately and other recyclables mixed together. Garden waste continuing as is in terms of collection frequency on a fortnightly collection and also as a paid for service, but with some flexibility that we're looking at the moment around whether that could be in a reusable bag, which is the current collection container, or a wheeled bin, possibly giving the option for customers of that service. And finally, at the bottom there on the graphic, general waste being collected in a wheeled bin, and the collection of general waste alternating with the recycling collections every other week. Just so you know, this graphic is taken from a draft of a document that we've been working on, which we are going to complete ready for the engagement work. So we're conscious that with the engagement work, which will take place with obviously the public as well as other stakeholders, the waste strategy draft is quite lengthy and quite in detail. And we are producing something that's going to be used as a summary to give people a chance to view the key points of the strategy and comment and feedback via the engagement process using that summary document. And this graphic you see in front of me was taken from that, so it's hopefully you agree it's quite a clear sort of graphic that hopefully gets across to the public and other stakeholders what the service is that we are proposing as the preferred option to take forward and do further work on. So in terms of what that further work will involve, two parts really: development of a more detailed business case. So as you'll see in the report, we have done some modelling on the different collection options. I think we're at the point where we needed to try and narrow that down, hence putting the preferred option forward and saying that we want to do some more work on it. So that includes the things you see listed on the left-hand side of the slide there, which are, again, just taken from the report really, but it's about getting into some more of the detail about vehicle types and containers, how and where we can transfer the food waste, what the timeline would be for such a change if indeed it were to be approved. So getting into more of that detail so that next calendar year we can come back and have all that detail to hand when we're at a point of making a decision about the future service. Second part is around stakeholder engagement, which again we'll come on to in a bit more detail. But I think it's fair to say we know the member working group from the work that has been done. We know that our waste and recycling collections must change, but we do want to gather opinions from stakeholders on how the proposed collection systems might affect them, and that feedback can then help us develop a final strategy and a final frontline service that takes that into account alongside the other key drivers that we're working to in the waste strategy.
Right, Chris, can we just hold a minute? I've got an RTS from Councillor Jack Davies. Jack, do you want to ask your question or speak now, or is there something particular that we've got so far?
It was just on the collection system regarding obviously the alternate weekly collections. Is that going to be a one-size-fits-all, or is that going to be they're going to be exception areas to that, based on kind of the types of property in those areas?
Very timely question. I think the next two slides possibly answer some of that question. So if it's okay with you, Councillor Davis, I'll go through the next couple of slides, or actually my colleague Nicola will, and then if you've still got any questions after that, we can perhaps come back after that, if that's okay with you.
Yep, thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we'd like to do is consider some of the questions that are undoubtedly that come to light with any new recycling scheme. So this isn't sort of particularly specific to the option that we're proposing to look at. It's actually if you were doing any new recycling scheme, introducing any new containers or changing collection frequencies, there are some common considerations that would have to be taken into account. And we wanted to take you through some of those. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague Nicola Plummer to take us through the next couple of slides.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, so as Chris said, we tried to think about some of the common considerations that may relate to any frontline service change. So you can see some of these on the slide here. I think it's important to remember that for the vast majority of residents in the New Forest, they will be living in a housing situation that means that they will comfortably be able to accommodate containers for waste. And it is a small proportion of those households where we will need to consider these additional points. We also really want to think about the frontline service, and until the frontline service has been agreed, we really won't be able to develop or fully develop the answers to these considerations. But what we do need to do is we need to think about what work needs to be done to ensure the best solutions for the New Forest. So this slide really looks at how we will work through those considerations, and these are some of the tools that we'll use to work through those considerations. So our existing service already accounts for hard to reach properties. We already understand where these properties are, and we structure our rounds and our collection vehicle types accordingly. So we use, for our most rural properties, we use small cage vehicles to collect from, and we have a range of narrower vehicles or smaller vehicles for narrow access problems throughout the district. So we can use this information that we hold already, but we accept that a new service will mean new challenges. We're in the fortunate position that these potential changes are nothing new for many local authorities. So there's lots of learnings that we can take from others. For example, we know that in Test Valley, they provide a split service using SACs in their town centres to account for properties that have no outside space or that front straight onto a highway. We know that in East Devon, they have an application process for bigger bins to help larger families dispose of their waste. And we know that this works in tandem with extensive communications and education initiatives to help residents recycle more and recycle better. We will also and have been looking at latest research from organisations such as RAP. And although we have less flats in our area than other authorities do in more urban areas, there are certainly learnings that we can take from recent studies to help improve the collection system for flats and for residents of these flats. Developing policy will be key. So when we think about things like bespoke to our district, in terms of livestock and waste, we need to be clear on the policy for both residents and for our own operatives. And we need to communicate this effectively. And we also need to work with our key stakeholders to ensure that we establish best safe practice for all of the individual waste streams. Most importantly, we need to carry out extensive surveying to ensure that all areas that potentially may have issues with storage or access are assessed in terms of the needs of the new service, and that a best fit solution is sought.
Nicola, can I just stop you a minute? I've got a request to speak from Councillor Alan Glass. Alan, is it appropriate for you to speak at this moment?
Thank you, yes. Just I was interested to find out, because I live in a fairly small house and a lot of other people do, how many bins would we be expected to have? And also for people for, let's say, getting on a bit older than me even, or disabled people, can they opt out of the wheelie bin system? Because some people are scared of them tipping on them.
Right. Nicola, can you quickly answer that at the moment?
In terms of number of containers, the proposal is for a wheeled bin for recycling, a wheeled bin for residual or general waste, a reusable sack for paper and cardboard, and a container separate for food waste. So And then obviously the garden waste is a paid for service. So if you opt to sign up for that, there is obviously going to be a container for that as well. In terms of opting out, I think what I was just coming to really was that what we would want to do is carry out extensive surveying to ensure that the property types are suitable for this service. In terms of older people or people that can't manage those containers or get them to the edge of their property, we already have an assisted collection service. So for those people that are genuinely in need, we would continue that service.
Right. Thank you, Nicola. Are you happy with the response, Alan?
I am, but I'd like to think about it a bit more, because I'm very concerned about if you've got to have 2 wheelie bins and 2 other bins in a lot of small gardens. That's a lot of space.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is the start of a process, Alan. So you'll have plenty of opportunity in the future. Whilst we have a hold at the moment, Nicola, Councillor Geoffrey Blunden has asked to speak.
Good afternoon.
Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. I was just picking up on the green waste side, and Nicola said that referred to that as container. I think that when I saw the slides, it's actually an either or which could be offered for green waste, because that's the paid service, either a container or a sack. I think I've got that right, haven't I, Nicola?
Yes, that is the proposal or the action set out within the draft strategy. Yes, at the moment, yeah.
Right. I was just making the point because obviously with green waste, it's very seasonable. You might have a large amount sometimes and a small amount other times, where the sacks actually come into a lot more easily usable. But thank you for that, Nicola.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Please carry on, Nicola.
Yes, okay, so just with regards to surveying, one further point is that obviously our service would need additional resource to be able to do that effectively. And that's okay. So this slide basically shows an estimated number of premises which fall into certain categories. This is our current work, and this is estimates. This isn't anything to do with us going out and doing proper surveying. So this would need to be looked at in detail, which may mean going out and assessing streets or in some cases individual properties. But at the moment we're looking at over 90% of households within the district being suitable for what we would call our core service.
Okay, thanks, Nicola. A couple more slides from me, just to move things on a little bit from the sort of operational considerations that we've been thinking about, and will continue to do so in over the coming months. What else can we do? So this is a slide that just summarises the other actions within the waste strategy, because I know most interest is going to be in that first action, but there are some other important actions within the waste strategy document, which are on the screen in front of you. I don't propose to go through these sort of in huge detail, because the detail is in the report. All I would say is that lots of them are connected to that sort of overarching action 1, and how we deliver the frontline service. So, for example, the approach to what we do with bring sites in the future, how we collect trade waste, and what our collection policies are all quite closely linked to what that frontline service looks like. And again, with some of the software recommendations and introduction of technology into vehicle cabs, again, that's quite closely linked to the frontline service. So there is that sort of common theme running through lots of the other actions in the plan.
Chris, can I hold you there just a moment? Thank you. I do have a couple of further queries. Councillor Arthur Davis, my apologies for the delay. You wish to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I know this is your committee. I'm just a guest here, listening very intensely here. But you know what us councillors are like. We're hard to shut up, really. No, the question was for Nicola. I mean, I can see all the consulting you're going to do, and I'm sure we'll come up with a very good system in the end. But there is some residents I do know that live in Scotland that haven't got any front garden at all. Their front door goes straight out onto the street. Now, am I right in saying that they could be given sacks instead of wheelie bins, or something like that?
We would, like I said, we would be looking at all of those types of properties to assess those in terms of those suitability to the service that was selected, and that would be a very big part of our work. What the service is that those properties are eventually given, obviously we haven't drilled down into that at the moment, but like I say, that would be one of the biggest pieces of work that we would do to ensure that all properties that have issues with storage and access are assessed and given a best fit solution.
Thank you very much, Nicola. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, Arthur. Davies again, please.
Yes, you just can't shut up, us Davises. I was just going to ask about the whole alternate weekly collection system. Obviously, that's kind of been the one where I've had the most queries from residents. And I know that we've had, certainly in Pennington, big issues with rubbish build-up during the week, usually outside communal flats, but also elsewhere in the village. And I was just wondering, will that be monitored after this is implemented, this new system, to see if there's an improvement or a negative effect compared to the current system?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I can take that question. So yeah, I think in terms of the appearance of the street scene and piles of bags being left and things like that, the first thing is we'd like to get to those kind of issues in the sort of surveying phase. So if we know that there are existing problems in some areas with build-up of waste, that's exactly the kind of location that we would get feedback from our crews, get feedback from perhaps yourselves as local members, as those being potential pinch points that we need to look at and we need to consider, so that we can decide whether we need to do something differently in those areas to stop that becoming an issue, whether we need to put extra resource into the collection in that area, and we would look at those different options, like we said about when we do the surveying and trying to find something that fits best. And I think it's fair to say as well, once we come up with those, what we think is the best fit for those areas, then we would keep that under review, because we probably won't get all of it right first time, and we can keep that under review, so that actually if we think, well, actually that's not working quite how we thought it would, we can flex and we can look to see what we can do in those areas. And it's about educating the residents as well, and making sure that they've got all the information they need to properly participate in the service that we provide.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Two more left at the moment. Tony Ring, you wanted to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Two points. One, we've said even on this slide in front of us now, help residents understand. Is there any sort of timescale in mind for public consultation? Where we're actually going out to the public to explain our position and ask for views.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and that will follow on the next slide, in fact, and some slides after that. Yeah.
I'll wait for that then.
No,
and then
no
the second one, probably quite unfair of me to ask this of you, but something I do want to flag up. I can think of a couple of areas where you have a terrace with some sort of access to back areas, gardens. So the feeling, I'm sure, will be that, wheeled bins can go out the back garden and out of sight, and that's that. However, the bits I'm thinking of where there is either very little or very narrow footpath areas, so that those bins have to come out onto the footpath for collection days. Now, in the areas I'm thinking of, for example, if a wheelchair or baby buggy literally can't get past and winds up bumping down the curb in the carriageway or some such, if an accident were to occur in those sort of circumstances, who would be liable?
I'm not sure I could answer that one.
Get your solicitor, Chris.
But again, all I would reiterate is again that we would hope to get intelligence that particular area might be a problem, and if we didn't think that the sort of core scheme, if you like, was going to work there, then we would look at something else. I mean, I guess at the moment in an area like that, they will have bags put out on collection day that could potentially provide exactly that kind of obstruction already. So it might not necessarily be a new problem just associated with bins. I don't know clearly exactly the area you're talking about, but it might be an issue that we already have and that wouldn't actually be made any worse by the introduction of bins. But again, I think we would hope to get information on that ahead of introduction of the scheme to make sure that what we were going to do wasn't going to cause issues like that.
And we might have an opportunity to flag it up as and when the process goes forward.
I think
absolutely.
I think we'll obviously clearly the public giving us feedback are going to be very important in the run up to, if this is the sort of the chosen scheme, or something like this is the chosen scheme, in the run up to introducing it, we will be relying on our collection crews to feedback these areas, and our area supervisors, also the public, but also yourselves as as elected members who know your areas and your residents. We'll want to try and gather as much of that information in as possible to make sure that when we launch it, it's got the best chance of success.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Chris. Chris, there's one more at the moment. Councillor Jeff Blunden, you request to speak again?
Yep, thank you. I was just picking up on Jack Davis's comments on build-up of rubbish, and he was saying about fortnightly collections. But I believe I got this right, actually, that the food collections are on a weekly basis. There will always be a collection of either normal rubbish or recycle every week anyway, and as the amount of rubbish is going to be split between those two. But my main point is there's still going to be a weekly collection of some materials. Have I got that right?
That's correct. Yeah. So there is still weekly collections of something, like you've said. The food waste is a weekly, that is every week, and then the other materials alternate. So you're either having your recycling or your general waste collected every week. I think the important thing is the weekly collection of the food waste, because that is the proportion of residual waste, as you've seen in the report. 40% of residual waste is food waste, and we want to try and get that out of those black bags and into a recycling route for numerous reasons. But by getting that material out of the residual waste and having it collected weekly, that's the sort of the smelly element of the waste, if you like, that's taken out and collected weekly, which clearly is a benefit in terms of recycling, but also in terms of householders sort of managing their waste on a weekly basis, knowing that they can get rid of that sort of material.
Yes, that's a real tick in the box. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Thanks, Jeff. Chris, thank you, Jeff. Chris, just one more at the moment. Councillor Stephanie Osborne, you wish to speak?
I was down as well.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, Derek.
Sorry, I'm getting there. Start my video. Yes, I was quite concerned if the food waste went more than a week. I think that would be a dreadful idea, especially in the environment or the area that I live in. I'm just thinking about these wheelie bins. We don't actually have a footpath in my road, so I'm not sure where the wheelie bin would stand, because the black bin liners, I think some people think it's quite a good sport to drive up my road and just about miss the bags, and they get split and they get chucked into great big piles. And what I'm worried about is it's not only food waste, there's other residual waste that I'm quite concerned is going to go sometimes 2-3 weeks. So that's my concerns at the moment. Reading these appendixes, there's lots of variations on it. Can I just ask, the picture that you put up was Romsey, wasn't it, on the slide just now?
It was, yeah. That was just, we put that picture up because, as I think Nikki mentioned, in some of the town centres in the Test Valley area, including Romsey, they've designed something slightly differently for the waste service, which is a sack collection. Because as you can see in the picture there, that's clearly you've got probably some domestic premises above the shops and that you can see there that need to put out waste. And would it be appropriate for wheel bins to line those shopping streets possibly not. That's what Test Valley decided. So they put in place something else, which I think is a SAC collection to over 100 properties in Romsey Town Centre. So it was just as an example of a way in which you could vary the service.
That's what I'd heard. I'd met some people that were very into conservation in Romsey, and they were just saying to me, "Oh, we've all worked so hard on the education." And I wondered if you had spoken to them. They worked so hard on the educating of people that they'd gone where they'd very, very little waste left, and they were asking them to collect the wheelie bins back. Whether that's true, but that's what this woman told me. So I just wondered if you had communicated with them.
Yes,
Thank you. That was about all I've thought of so far. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Derek, did you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I don't know whether we're going to go into the detail of the report with these slides, but I've looked at the report very carefully. And the top item on this slide that's on the screen there, reduce bulky waste. And in the report itself, I notice on page 20, I think it is, bulky waste collection service, that they actually say that bulky waste is actually disposed of by being put in the ground, which seems an extraordinary thing to me, because why can't it be crushed and then burnt like a lot of other things are? I mean, I just can't quite understand that it could be put into the ground. It's an extraordinary thing. So that was the first point. And that, I mean, as for reducing it, I noticed that on the chart there on page 20, it is reducing, and they are quite a lot of reduction there. 2016 it was 488 tonnes, 2019 272 tonnes, so it is going down. I mean, if people have got bulky refuse, then I don't think it's a good idea to make it too difficult for them to dispose of it, for the obvious reasons that they'll end up disposing of it by dumping it, and we certainly don't want to encourage that in any way. But there is another question I was going to ask about food waste. I don't know whether to ask that now or later. What do you think?
No, ask that one now, and then Chris can answer your two questions.
Okay, then. Currently, our food waste is put out into the black sacks, as you all know. And apparently, according to the recycling data, it doesn't count towards recycling, even though it goes to our energy recycling place and is actually burnt to produce electricity. Now, if we take it out of that stream and we collect it separately, it will then go to an anaerobic digester, and it will then be it'll then produce methane, which is then used to burn. So my question is this: what's the difference between burning the food directly and producing electricity, and anaerobically digesting it to produce methane, which you then burn?
Over to you, Chris.
Okay, yeah, no problem. If I take your first question first around bulky waste, so you're right in that certainly at the moment, most or all of the bulky waste collected across Hampshire does have a landfill sort of end destination. It's a county council function, as I'm sure you know, in terms of the disposal routes that our waste takes once we've sort of passed it over to them. They have looked with their contractor Veolia at an energy recovery process for that material. What it can't do is it can't go into our energy recovery facilities that we have, like the one at Marchwood and the other two within the county, because of the size and the nature of the waste. It can't go in its current form. It's too big, and it can jam up the process in the energy recovery facility. So you mentioned something there, Councillor Tip, about sort of crushing it and burning it. So what they can do is they can sort of shred that material and produce a fuel. But what they have found, I think, in recent years is that it hasn't been economic to do that, and also that we haven't. Again, that material couldn't go through our existing energy recovery facilities because they're not designed for that kind of material. It would have to go to a specialised energy facility for that kind of waste. They call it solid recovered fuel, SRF, which is a specific type of material that can go into a specific type of incinerator, and most of which are on the continent rather than being readily available within this country. So I know the county have looked at that in the past, but certainly at the moment it's not something that is proving economical to do. That's probably all I can say on that, really, from a sort of waste collection point of view. You're right in that the bulky waste tonnage is reducing, has been reducing for some time. partly due to the work that we've been doing and the county council have been doing with trying to signpost residents to the charity sector that reuse a lot of these sort of furniture type items or recycle them. And our preference certainly is that they, that the third sector, the charity sector, actually take as much of that material as possible if they can find an end use for it. So our aim is to sort of do that, really, is to push people in that direction. If people have got items that aren't suitable for reuse or recycling, then yes, clearly we need to provide some sort of bulky service for them to avoid those items perhaps becoming fly tipped. On the food waste, you're right. So they are both sort of energy processes. Energy recovery, as we know it, in terms of our residual waste going to Marchwood, obviously it burns the waste and produces electricity. In terms of carbon, that's not as efficient a process, or in terms of greenhouse gas, that's not as efficient a process as anaerobic digestion. And because of that, central government class an anaerobic digestion process as a recycling process, and the Marchwood type process as a recovery process. So in the waste hierarchy in the document, if you recall, you've got sort of one sitting above the other, and recycling being above recovery in terms of sort of what's best environmentally and economically in many cases. The only other thing I'd say is that anaerobic digestion produces a fertilizer as well that can be spread to land, so that it has a material that has a good end use that comes out sort of the back end of the anaerobic digestion process that can be used on land as well.
Okay, Chris, I think, yes, you covered this exceptionally well. I think you're happy with that, Derek?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for that.
Yes, indeed, thank you. Okay, Chris, please carry on. I'm sorry for the interruptions.
No, that's okay. So I'm going to hand back to Nikki in a moment to talk about stakeholder engagement. So we have circulated a sort of fairly high-level engagement plan alongside the strategy document and the cover report that describes how we plan to engage with those who have an interest in our waste service, and they are listed on the slide that you see there. That in no particular order, that's a group of stakeholders that the member working group on the waste strategy we came up with sort of together. So they're the people on the list, if you like, and Nikki now is going to provide a bit of a summary of how we plan to engage with 3 of those key stakeholders. We're not going to go through all of them, but we are going to cover residents, councillors and staff. So I'll hand back to Nikki just for this last section.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so firstly, our operational staff are key. The potential changes will affect their day-to-day working practice. So we have been, through our staff newsletters, keeping them up to date about the work we've been carrying out on the new waste strategy, and the fact that this has been fueled through the release of the national waste strategy and the need for change as discussed. More recently, Chris has been down at all 3 of our depots giving briefings to our operational staff, and this has included talking about the current timeline for work, and then updates on things that we know so far. So moving forward, we plan to provide all our staff and office-based staff with a full engagement pack, and this will be provided in both a paper copy and an online format, and there will be opportunity for those staff to comment and feedback on the proposals in those documents. So our biggest stakeholder group are obviously our residents, and ensuring that they are aware of the engagement opportunity, as well as providing succinct information, will be very important. We plan to do this through both online and traditional print-based advertising to make people aware. And we will provide, as Chris alluded to earlier, a very clear, accessible summary document that people can have access to. And we will also ensure that all residents that need to can easily obtain a paper copy of the full document, the summary document, and the engagement survey. I think Chris mentioned in terms of engagement earlier, we do need to bear in mind the context of the engagement with residents. we have established already that change is needed. So the engagement survey will focus on the preferred option and how that will affect our residents. And the feedback will be used to consider how we deliver the future service, and importantly, what and how we communicate with our residents. Okay, so for members, again, they will receive a full document, summary document, and an FAQ document as an engagement pack. And there'll be opportunity for members to return open comments by a specific email address, but also just to ask further questions in relation to the strategy throughout that engagement period. In addition to this, what we plan to do is to arrange some question and answer sessions, or at least one question and answer session towards the middle of the engagement period. So this will be a panel where members can submit pre-submitted questions. And on that panel, we will have officers, but we also have industry experts from RAP and from the consultants that we've been working with, Wood. And we'll also look to at least have one representative from another local authority that's been through similar and recent service changes. And the information for these question and answer sessions will be provided at the same time as the full engagement pack for members on the 12th of November.
Nicola, do we want to stay there as to mention that this starts on the 12th of November to the 10th of December, the engagement period?
That's right. Yes, it's a four week period running through to the 10th of December.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki. So this is the last slide now of the presentation, which just highlights some of the key sort of upcoming dates. Yes. So Cabinet on the 4th of November is the next sort of formal council meeting that will discuss this strategy document. Then that engagement period starts throughout the rest of November and into December. You'll recall, just thinking back to what our action one is to do the engagement work and also to develop a business case alongside our consultant that we've been working with so far on this project, which will be carried out during November and December, and we'll look to work on that during that period. It looks like there may be some further developments in terms of our relationship with the county council and what infrastructure they're going to provide us and all the districts in Hampshire with for the future. So you may have seen in the report we're very closely linked to what the county provide, because we collect the waste, they accept it and dispose of it, but we need to make sure the two sort of are aligned there. And we're expecting to have a meeting with the county and our Project Integral partners on waste infrastructure, possibly at some point in December, which will again give us just a bit more detail to add into the strategy about things like timescales and what's actually going to be available to us in terms of waste infrastructure going forward. And then we will work with the member working group on a timetable for approval of the final strategy. We do have a meeting of the working group and another environment panel currently scheduled for January. So with the working group, we'll have a look at what the timetable might be for turning this draft strategy into a final strategy in sort of the early part of 21.
Right, Chris, thank you. Just a second. I have two colleagues that want to raise a question. First one, Derek Tipp, you wanted to speak.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm looking at the table on page 34 on costs of the different services. I see that the costs are quite significant, but I don't know, the table doesn't tell me, are these costs increases per year, or are they costs in terms of the extra cost of actually getting it up and running, or is this an annual increase? And there's huge differences between them. There are four different costs here, the four different types. Mm-hmm. And I believe the preferred one that we're going to go for is am I correct, is number 3, the curbside sort. I hope it is, because it's far, far cheaper than any of the others. Interesting. I wonder why there's such a significant difference. Is it because you're going to be able to retain the existing lorries and so on? Is that why it's much cheaper, or are there other reasons? Thank you.
Okay, no problem. So it's option 4 from that list that is the one that's identified in action 1 as the one to do some further work on. The costs are annual costs according to a model. So we did work with the consultants to build up the service in terms of, for each of those service options, what number of vehicles would we need, what number of staff would we need, and build up the sort of cost of providing those vehicles and those staff, and then compare that across the different options. So they all come out more expensive than the current service, and the main reason for that is the cost of the food waste collection. As you know, that's the main sort of element of the service that government are sort of going to be mandating or legislating for, and that weekly collection of food waste is quite an expensive service to provide, because you need dedicated vehicles and you need to provide that to all 82,000 households across the district. So that is that does form quite a large part of that cost. The curbside sort option that you alluded to does come out, in terms of collection cost, operational collection cost, does come out cheaper. So the main reason for that is that with a curbside sort service, you've got what we call a one pass system. So you have a vehicle going down a street and collecting lots of different material commodities on the same vehicle. What that creates and what isn't accounted for in that cost information is any costs of then dealing with that waste once it's been collected, because what you end up with is a vehicle that has 5 or 6 different material streams located on it. To be able to offload all those materials separately, is costly in terms of the amount of time it takes, but also, and this is where the conversations with the county council come back into it, it very much depends on where we are taking that material to has the capacity, the space, etc., to offload all those different types of material. So that's what county council have been looking at in the last few months. They've been looking at, could the waste transfer sort of infrastructure that we use across the whole county, not just for New Forest, could that accommodate a curbside sort system? Could it accommodate the twin stream system, which is what we are looking at? And that's the results that we are expecting to find out more in December. But it's likely, I think, and fairly logical that to set up the waste transfer stations for a curbside sort system would be costly, and in a lot of cases probably not even feasible, because the transfer stations just wouldn't be big enough to accommodate that offloading of the waste. All I would add in terms of the cost information is, in terms of developing the business case for that preferred option, we need to narrow down and drill into some of those numbers in a lot more detail to have a bit more comfort in terms of what the numbers are telling us.
Thank you. I would have thought we'd need more detail in those charts, frankly, because people like me are very simple, and they will look at those figures and they will see curbside sort is about 8 times cheaper, and unless you put those other points in there, people will not understand that. So I was suggesting that you really need more detail on that.
Okay.
All right, Chris.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Derek. I've got 3 more people wishing to speak, so hang on. Jeff Blunden's next, please.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Picking up on Nicola's first slide, it talked about seeking, sort of telling the staff what's going to happen. I guess one of the questions early on they might well be asking is this going to change the numbers of staff required to operate the system? I know it's early days, but have you a view on that? Was that question asked, and have you been able to reassure them?
Yeah, I mean, I was, as Nikki said, I was down at the depot talking to the guys. That was something that came up. I think with the introduction of a food waste service, as I just mentioned, that's quite a resource intensive collection service, because you need to collect weekly from all 82,000 households. So I think what we're looking at in terms of staff is probably staff increases to deliver that suite of services rather than reductions. Again, that's something that will come through in the business case in the next sort of stage in terms of what those numbers are, but that's certainly the direction of travel, I would say. Okay, so I know it's early days, but there may well be some job opportunities now to service whatever is required in the future. Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Chris. Next to speak, Councillor Sue Bennison, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I've been saving up my questions as we've gone through this. So it's a little list I have, really. But if I could start with the composting subject, which our public speaker raised. And I think she mentioned about food composting. Well, of course, composting is something that I do at home big time, but it's only plant material. As a gardener, we are always told never, never, never do you put any processed food, meats or anything of that sort on your compost heap at home. So I just wanted to just reiterate that point. Going to the food waste collection, I'm assuming that people like me would want to put their food waste into some sort of plastic bag before putting it in the receptacle for it to be collected. Is that food waste going to be collected in a plastic bag, or is that plastic bag going to be turned out into the collecting vehicle? So that's one question. Shall I carry on and ask all the questions and you can come back to?
I'm jotting them down, so that's fine.
Yes,
yeah.
so, thanks, Chris.
So the next thing was bins out all day. Now, I live very close to the border with Wiltshire, and the other morning at 8 o'clock, I obviously was driving down the road to get my car serviced, and it was bin day, and all the bins were out, all these green wheelie bins. And when I went down to collect the car at about 4:30, all the bins were still out. Now, inside the perambulation, the gated area of the perambulation, one would not want to see on various days going across the forest, because all collection days will be different, a whole row of wheelie bins stuck out on the forest. And I particularly noticed your picture, which I noticed was Romsey as well, that they'd made that decision that they would not want wheelie bins stuck out on the streets. Well, I think the same really applies across the open forest, and I'm talking about the area where we have the animals roaming. So my next question is on reusable sacks. This was for, I can't quite remember what that was for, but my question was the reusable sack. I think it was for the paper and cardboard. The reusable sack, will the chaps that are collecting it empty that sack and give it back to the household? Is that how that's going to operate? Where I am, I'm on one of the collection services, which is the caged collection service. So there's no way that we would be able to receive a curbside vehicle with these various types. And I can't be the only situation across the forest where at the moment we have a caged collection. So that will be something, obviously there would be a different system for properties as where I live. And my last point is on the anaerobic digestion versus the incineration. I understand what anaerobic digestion is all about. It's the same thing that my muck heap does. But it does take a lot longer. So you're going to have a lot more space for that to do that job, which is similar to that of an incinerator. That's it, Chairman. Thank you.
All right, so thank you. Over to you, Chris. You got the list.
Okay. Yep. I hope so. Okay, so liners for food waste is something that we want to look at as part of the development of the business case, because there are various ways that we could do that. Some authorities issue compostable liners, so they're small bags made of compostable material that line the internal kitchen caddy, so the one that residents would have in the house, in the kitchen or under the sink or in the utility room or whatever. And they would then take the bag, the resident would take the bag out of that smaller caddy and put the bag into the external food waste container that the crews then empty.
Thereby keeping that container clean, of course.
Correct, yes. So I think that the question we need to answer is, with the liners, is one around cost and who provides. And there's a mix of approaches to that from different councils. Some councils deliver them to every household across the district. Some do it on a sort of request basis. If you're a resident and you phone up and you request them, then the council will provide them. other councils, do actually just point residents to local supermarkets, because these bags are on sale now. If you go into Tesco and you are alongside your black and white bin liners in the supermarkets, you can get these compostable food waste liners as well. So obviously each of those has a cost implication on the council, and it has an implication on participation in the food waste service as well. So that's probably all I can say on that, other than that's something we need to look at in more detail as part of the business case development. Bins left out after collection, a couple of things to say on that. We will have the council will need to have a waste collection policy that will define when we are asking people to put their containers out and when we would like them to take them back in. That will hopefully help us to get those messages out.
Yeah, just on that point, would it, for instance, be possible for the guys to wheel the wheelie bin back inside the gate of the property?
I think that's something.
It's not out on the forest.
I think that's something we'd have to look at in terms of the surveying, and also the engagement with residents and people like the verderers as well, to decide what's going to be best for those areas. So I couldn't probably answer that one now. I mean, what we'd obviously have to take into account is the time that would take the crews to be able to do that at every property. In terms of reusable sacks for paper and card, these are a similar sort of sack to the garden waste sack, if that helps just people visualise what they sort of look like, or they're possibly a slightly different size and shape, but it made of that sort of material. And yes, the crew would empty that bag and return the empty bag to the property from where they received it. Cage collection vehicles, yes, you're right, we do have a small number, only a few hundred properties that have collection from a cage vehicle, because that's the only vehicle we can actually squeeze down to those properties. And again, we'd have to think about what and how we can provide to those properties, because they will be difficult to access with the larger vehicles that would be used elsewhere. And then finally, anaerobic digestion. Yes, obviously with that you have the food waste being processed for a longer period of time than it is when it just goes through a traditional incinerator and is obviously put through that process quite quickly. AD facilities is something that we do talk about briefly in the strategy. We do have a shortage of those sort of within Hampshire, and we need to work out with the county council actually what facilities we might use. There's one in Dorset that Eastleigh use for their food waste material. They tend to be quite often they're on farms where there is a bit more room to provide that kind of facility, and they're quite often on farms because actually the farmer then takes the fertilizer at the end of the process and puts that onto the land, and that's obviously right next door to where the facility is. So it's a different type of sort of process to energy recovery.
Lovely. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you for that,
Thank you,
Chairman.
Sue. Thank you. Two more questionnaires. First is Malcolm Wade, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's worth bearing in mind where we're in this position. The government has insisted that waste is collected and disposed of in a different manner to we do now. And this council has had one of the worst records on recycling for very many years in the country. So we are where we are. But one of the things that I mentioned, and I remember speaking to Chris in his office actually, well, at the very beginning of this process, that because of the unique environment of the New Forest, a one-size-fits-all solution won't really be appropriate. And I would ask that this authority looks with sensitivity at certain places, and I'm not going to suggest which ones they are now, where we do need to look at a variation between wheelie bins and sacks. We need to have the flexibility to pick up both, because some places the wheelie bin won't work, some places they will. As regards the report, Chairman, I have a compliment and a criticism. When it comes to a report dealing with waste disposal, it's very well put together. A lot of hard work's gone into it. And one can't say more enough. But my criticism, and I've said this before in the panel, on the hierarchy of waste, the first thing is waste minimisation. And that does not come out in a strategy, because it's not a complete strategy, because it doesn't deal with how this authority can work with waste minimisation going forward. That's the key. Reduce the waste when we don't have to have as many collections, we don't have to get rid of as much. Yes, but we do need to recycle as much as we can. We need to do all of that. But if we don't create the waste in the first place, it's not as big a problem for us to collect or the county to dispose of. And waste minimisation isn't dealt with to the extent that it should be. And I think we should work with that. I'm pleased that we're going to engage with the residents because they're the key stakeholders in this to try and get them on board and understand the situation we're in. But I say again and again, waste minimisation needs to be an increased priority for this authority. And I would like to hear the officer's response to that.
Thank you, Malcolm. Chris.
Okay, thank you. You're quite right. Waste minimisation sits at the top of that waste hierarchy. I think what we've tried to think about in the waste strategy, we have taken waste minimisation into account, I think, because one of the best things we can do in terms of getting residents to minimise waste is change the way that we collect that waste. So, for example, as we've talked about in the working group, at the moment we have an unlimited black bag collection. People can put out, and frequently do put out, as many bags as they like, and there's not that sort of encouragement to reduce waste, because we turn up and we collect it once a week and we take it away, sort of no questions asked. And in terms of waste minimisation, that doesn't set the best of examples, which is why part of the reason for containing waste and looking at things like collection frequency, as well as adding in further recycling services, will encourage residents to minimise their waste, because suddenly they actually have a finite capacity in which to place their waste, and so that will have anything we can do that will have the biggest impact on waste minimisation, because it will get people to think about what they produce, what they purchase, and actually sort of try and encourage that behaviour change that we do all want to see in terms of waste minimisation. So I know we've had that, we have discussed that before, obviously at the panel, Councillor Wade. I know that's a subject that's close to your heart. So I guess it's probably for the chairman to decide how to take that one forward.
Can I just come back with that? What I get exactly what you're saying. It's what I would call a passive way of waste minimisation, but we need to be active with the creation of that, to reduce the creation. And there are initiatives other councils and other countries do in areas where that works. And I would like to see us looking at that in greater detail. I get, as I said, the report you put together, there's a lot of hard work gone into it, and it's a well put together report for waste disposal. But I want to see our waste strategy to include reducing the waste in the first place. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
Finally, at the moment on the list is Councillor Anne Bellows, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to say that this is a brilliant report, and obviously a lot of work's gone into it. But I'm just slightly concerned about the reusable sacks for the cardboard and also the food bins, because where I live, we don't have a collection right outside of our houses because we've got a grassy area, there's a hedge, so we have to physically take our things and everyone piles them up in one place. And I do subscribe to the garden waste scheme, and I get really upset when I put out my neat, tidy bag, which I've looked after, and I'm returned with a disgusting, dirty, holey bag, which someone else has taken no care with. And I wouldn't like this to be happening with my cardboard and paper thing, and also with my food. So how are you going to make sure that we do get, the ones, I take care of my things, I'm going to get mine back. I want mine.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Okay. Got a paintbrush, Chris, and number every one of them?
Yeah, I mean, other councils have come up with ways of allowing householders to sort of mark their bags with the house number or house name. So I know in an authority I worked in, when we delivered the containers, we also delivered a smallish sticker for residents to write their house number on and stick that on the, it was bins in that case, but it could equally work on a food waste caddy. And what I'm not sure with the bags how that would work, but I'll take that point away and have a chat with with the team and with the consultants and with bag manufacturers to see what we could put in place for that in the future.
Great, thank you.
Pleasure, Anne. Thank you, Chris. Right, nobody else has asked to speak. So, right.
Chairman, I think there is one more on the list.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at my.
Philip
Dowd. Why isn't he on my list then?
Philip Dowd and Andrew as well.
Right. Okay. Thanks for noticing that. Let's start with Philip then, please, and then we'll go on to Andrew Gossage. Sorry about that. Oh, there you are. Gotcha. Yes. Sorry. Philip, please do.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't actually going to say anything, but I do think it is in the report. But I do want to point out to councillors that are not aware that there's already been a high level of public consultation on this through surveying and an online survey. So I do want to make that point that, right the way through this, we've been told that there is going to be a high level of public engagement, as there should be, but that's already happened, and I think the response to the survey was quite impressive.
Thank you, Philip. Noted. Stephanie, yes, I've noted that you put the number on your glass crate, as does Anne, to keep yours clean. A thought for others. Anyway, last person to speak at the moment on the list. Anyway, Councillor Andrew Gossage, please.
Chairman, thank you very much indeed. I've been listening with interest both to the officers' presentations and of the report that I read through and to the questions that have been asked. And it's been really interesting to read from end to end the report and to see the detail that's gone into it. So my congratulations to Chris and the team and to the panel that have worked hard to put it all together. And of particular interest, I thought, in terms of any report that the Council produces, I have never ever seen such a detailed and proficient engagement strategy presented with dates and places and people and all the rest of it put together. It really should work, this engagement strategy. So congratulations to that, and I wish it all the best, and we'll be following it on the way through. I think a number of the questions have also produced the individual, we all have house waste to get rid of, and it is very much a question of once out of sight, out of mind for most of us, except for the small problems that we have with bird strikes on the bags or nowhere on the pavement to put a wheeled bin and so on. And so it's quite an individual thing that I think we're hearing today, and that I guess Chris and the team have come across. I'm trying desperately to maintain the overall picture and look at it from a councillor perspective and a district council in solving the problem of taking the byproducts of living away efficiently and dealing with them efficiently in an environmentally friendly fashion in a period of climate change. Which I think is something that the District Council, as others are, should be looking at holistically the whole time rather than in a stovepipe approach. So that's very good. And as part of that, what I was very interested to see as well, inclusion in the report, were the best practice figures and the areas, the different councils that were achieving best practice. Some of them, I think there's one in Norfolk or Suffolk Coastal, I think it was, which is where I used to live previously. I think they probably have the same sort of issues, in fact, because they have a mixture of rural and urban to deal with. And just to endorse the sort of mixed approach is clearly going to have to be the way, because one service won't fit all. So I completely endorse what the report recommends there. And at the end of the day, in taking this as a district-wide issue as a councillor, not as an individual, the most important thing we've got to do is having done the nuts and bolts of coming up with a proposal and an action plan, is to achieve behavioural change. That is probably the biggest issue to overcome of all, because if the right material doesn't go into the right box for collection on the right day, it's not going to work, and we're just going to end up with a mess at the other end, whether it's going improperly into the anaerobic digester or whether it's going into the dry mix cycling side. So that is so important, and I think that's really where, as district councillors, we've got the opportunity to really role play on that. No particular questions as such. It makes eminent sense to me. I can see the thought process and analysis that's gone on behind the presentation of the report, and I would certainly be very happy to recommend this report to Cabinet on the 4th of November, and to have best of luck with the engagement plan. Thank you very much indeed, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Yes, and I echo actually your compliments to Chris and his team. It is a substantial and very detailed look at the various options that are open to us. Chris, I think you've probably got enough on board from this last hour or so's discussions, where some refinement may be necessary. But otherwise, as far as I can see it, as far as the panel is concerned, we are in support of the report and recommend it to the Cabinet on the 4th of November. If anybody should actually disagree with my comment, would they RTS now, please? And I think no one has done so. May I take it as a consensus of agreement? And thank you, panel. Thanks everybody for their involvement in this. It's been extremely interesting, detailed, and a very useful conversation, I think. I'm sure Chris and his team have got much to think about and realise what may be up against us in the engagement plan. We wish you luck with it, assuming the Cabinet, of course, also agrees. But thank you very much indeed, Chris and Nicola and the rest of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, panel.
Thank you, Chairman.
Pleasure. Pleasure. Right. It is now well past 3 o'clock, so we don't have to wait to get on with the next item, which is the call-in request. The call-in request is to do with changes to short and long-term spaces in Windsor Road, Civic Centre and Westfield Road car parks, and the introduction of charges in Civic Centre and Westfield Road car parks in Totton. Now, I have a member of the public who has written to us, email, unfortunately unable to join us, but as public participation comes first, then I'll be asking Karen Wardle, our panel administrator, to read out the document. I will then ask Councillor Caroline Rackham, who actually engineered the call-in, to give her statement to us, followed by Colin. Sorry, I'm going to ask Colin Reid first to actually introduce the paper, then ask for Caroline Rackham to speak. So first of all, the public participation. Deborah Burrows was the person who wrote an email. Karen, could you start the statement? I'll see how you progress in time-wise, because she's really only allowed 3 minutes.
Okay, of course. This is from the Healthy Pet Store. Healthy Pet Store has expanded twice in the last 6 years, taking long, empty retail units in the Salisbury Road arcade shopping area. The business is based on the Iceland business model with a uniqueness unmatched anywhere in the country, selling own label, heavy frozen produce weighing 25 kilograms in excess of, requiring frequent purchases at low transaction value by households with small freezers, and not just within the New Forest. Customers often only come to the arcade to shop at Healthy Pet Store, park up at the Westfield car park and leave. This is why, whilst the parking permit scheme would help, it does not suit Healthy Pet Store's customer base. The business will not function profitably without this model working. Food retailing is price sensitive. Any change in the ability of customers to easily access and buy food and at competitive prices will send customers back to mainstream pet shops on destination retail parks, other supermarkets from which customers can also feed their pets, and other competition of which there are a small number dotted along the south coast. All of these provide limited time-free car parking. Salisbury Road Arcade is a shopping arcade comprising retail and office units, often owned both privately by Barbary and notably the New Forest District Council itself through a recent purchase from Shung Yip. Comparison has been made between other New Forest town high streets and this Totton shopping arcade, and a specific example made of a supermarket in another town which has no private car park. Upon research, this particular branch is a convenience store set amongst other high street retailers, which is different to the arrangement in the arcade and the Healthy Pet Store business. 27 Salisbury Road is the largest unit in this shopping arcade and was built to house a supermarket, and at the same time Westfield Road car park was built adjacent to it by the council, written in covenants and planning permission to serve it. Over the years, the building has been occupied by various supermarkets whose customers used the car park, until it became empty for several years following the demise of Countrywide Stores Limited. It would be therefore correct to assume that supermarket tenants would choose this location because of its free parking, as it's evidenced by their combined history since the 1970s. Waiting, loading time provision at this area would be insufficient for shopping and would clog up the access road and yards. The 2 yards are for the sole use of tenants parking or for lorry turning and are not for public parking. Anytime Fitness and Healthy Pet Store entered into negotiations to split the building. If the free parking facility had not been there, both businesses would not have been invested, leaving one of the largest retail units in Totton with no supermarket nor any other multinational interested in it. Indeed, Healthy Pet Store was at the end of its lease at 4 Salisbury Road Arcade in 2019. And it had known about these plans, it would have moved the business elsewhere at that point. Healthy Pet Store fully appreciates the need for council land to generate income and has had to urgently consider mechanism to maintain its business, considering refunding customer charges or buying permits, none of which are viable. Westfield Road car park and the Salisbury Road Arcade, its private and council tenants and customers it serves, is a unique shopping and leisure arcade area, which would be best to have a considered non-blanket solution to ensure its continued success and development in Totton.
Karen, hang on a second, we're well past the 3 minutes. I don't know if you're close to completing it. I don't think
That's
so.
the end. That's the end.
Right. Well, I know that members of the panel have received a full copy of this email prior to this meeting, so they will be aware of the remainder of the comments, but we do have a policy that 3 minutes is the maximum. In fact, I've allowed it run a bit longer than that. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair on other members of the public who would wish to give their opinion. So we will hold it there, Karen. Thank you very much. And I think members of the panel will have got a full picture of it from their copies that they've had available. I think it best now, please, if I would ask Colin Reid to present this call-in request to the panel, if you would, please, Colin.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, for those of you who aren't aware, the Chairman has asked me to present the paper that you've got before you today. The portfolio holder for planning and infrastructure made a decision on the 11th of September in respect of changes to short and long stay spaces in Windsor Road, Civic Centre and Westfield Road car parks in Totton. The aim of the decision was primarily to provide additional short stay spaces in the town centre and in the shopping centre at Rumbridge Street. This had come about from a request from Totton Town Council, who expressed concerns that commuters were parking in the town centre all day, and therefore we needed to ensure there was greater turnover of spaces to assist the businesses in Totton. With regards to charging, New Forest District Council run 5 car parks in Totton. 3 of those are chargeable and the 2 are free. The free ones are at Westfield Road and the Civic Centre. The reason that they are free is because the Totton Town Council have previously agreed to pay the business rates on these car parks, totalling about £28,000 a year. The problem with that arrangement is that the District Council do not get any benefit from fees that could be charged for the car park. Therefore, while we were looking at the issue of short and long-term spaces, we had a look at how fair we were treating the other car parks in and around the districts of New Forest. It's very clear that the 2 car parks in Totton that were free are our only free car parks in any towns and villages right across the district. And it was felt that what we should do is have a consistent approach district-wide. Therefore, the decision in the portfolio holder's decision was that we should install charges in the 2 car parks that we currently don't, and we should change a number of long stay spaces to short stay spaces to ensure that we have a turnover of people being able to access businesses in the Totton town centre. The next steps, as stated in the report, is to carry out the statutory consultation process, which we are scheduled to do over the next few weeks. Thank you, Chairman. That's my introduction.
Right. Thank you very much, Colin. Right, can I ask Councillor Caroline Rackham, please, to make her statement for the call-in?
Thank you. So I called in this decision because I wanted to ask the portfolio holder to think again on charging for parking in Totton, which I represent. We asked for help in dealing with the increasing issue of parking in Totton, particularly considering the amount of development that's coming our way from Totton North and Netley Marsh. And we'd hoped for help with the timings of the car parks, not full-on charging, which will be detrimental to businesses and push car park users into residential roads, which is already an issue. There seems to be a policy that all towns across the Forest District should be treated the same in terms of parking charges, and I would like to challenge that idea. Not all towns in the New Forest District are the same size or the same character. Totton looks towards the forest, of course, but it also looks over its shoulder towards Southampton, and our town centre economy is in direct competition with Shirley High Street, excuse me, Hedge End and wider Southampton. Totton is also very different to any other town in the New Forest area because it's so much bigger. It takes 1.5 to 2 hours to walk across Totton compared to 20 minutes, half an hour to cross Brockenhurst or Burley. So it's impractical to think that residents of West Totton and Calmore will walk to the centre of Totton in the depths of winter. We certainly can't demand that residents walk to the health centre and GP surgeries, which will be directly affected by these car park charges. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And buses from many areas of Totton are simply non-existent. Many of those who work for businesses in the town centre are on lower wages and are part-time, so the apparent reliance on the parking clocks, which Councillor Heron seems to be putting forward, will mean that part-time workers will need to pay out for the clocks at the same cost as full-time workers, raising the alleged 46 pence quite considerably for those earning less. I do not agree with charging for parking in the town centre, but at the very least, could the portfolio holder agree to the first 2 hours remaining free to enable the businesses and most of the health provision to maintain some free parking? Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you very much. Right, I've now got a number of other members of the council, which I'll ask to come forward before I open it up to members of the panel, if that's okay. So firstly, the first one is Councillor Neville Penman. Would you give your statement, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I just felt, as Chairman of Totton and Eden Town Council, I should comment. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to the committee today and put into record my views and statement on new car parking charges in Totton and for the residents and the town that I represent. After several meetings with my councillor colleagues, businesses and residents, I feel it is only right I put their views and mine to you. Our town is like no other in the New Forest, and I accept we all have the same amenities, as was pointed out to me by my fellow councillors. But I feel I can explain to you why our town is different from other towns and parishes in the New Forest. Our town is split into two by the railway line and train gates which can be closed for over 20 minutes each hour. Now, a third of the residents have to come over to the centre where we have 3 doctor surgeries, two very close together in the centre and the other just outside but close in Ringwood Road. We also have a dialysis unit that is used 7 days a week by people not only from Totton but by people outside our town, Southampton District and the New Forest. We also have our community centre, civic offices, the 3 school club that is used regular by the older generation, our library, which is one of the busiest in the New Forest, if not in Hampshire. We have had just moved into the Salisbury Road Arcade, a gym that is 24-hour, and a business called the Healthy Pet Store. I have been working with this business in the town, but this one, the Healthy Pet Store, and the owner, Deborah Burrows, which is close to £1 million a year turnover, they chose the area due to the premises being empty for 2 years, and the Westfield car park was also free parking, and as customers coming from all over the New Forest, Hampshire and other counties. And we also have an old type greengrocer is looking to take the empty shop in that area. We are the biggest town in the New Forest, and we have people that come from all over the place for miles to work in our shops, supermarkets, vets, banks and building societies. We have subsidised our car park for our residents and workers for outside our town for over 15 years. This is what makes our town different from others in the New Forest district. My fellow district and town councillors feel we have a problem with our business and workers in all areas, knowing that the supermarkets don't let their workers use their own car parks. I fully understand that we have to accept the majority verdict, but that doesn't help our town, which we feel is the biggest and different than all others in the New Forest. I just feel that given the reasons I have stated, we should have been looked at separately, and that is why we, the council, have subsidised NFDC car parks for so many years, thinking of ours and the other districts' residents. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Noel. Next I have on my list is Councillor Arthur Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agreed with everything that Councillor Penman said there. It's no secret that we've been fervently against this recommendation by the portfolio holder. We've challenged it. We've tried to argue it, but there is some arguments why we've talked to other councillors that feel they're subsidising us. Well, I don't accept that. As previous speakers have said, we got unique challenges in Totton. We're very close, as one of the councillors said, to Shirley High Street, 2 hours parking, which is a much bigger shopping centre. Even the retail park, the West Quay retail park, you can get half an hour free, so we feel that we're going to be hard done by with these charges, and I think, and I'm sure, it's going to affect the town drastically. We are unique because we've got, not only have we got a small shopping centre that was struggling before we introduced no charging, free car parking. It was empty shops, and now it's thriving. Also, we've got key services. We've got key services. We've got 2 doctor surgeries that service these car parks. We've got a dialysis unit. We've got an old people's club and the community centre, which does for vulnerable people like stroke clubs, etc. These will all be affected if we do away with free parking. I don't accept that by doing these charges that we're going to gain, the county, the district is going to gain £80,000 per annum. I would love to say, right, I told you so in a year's time or a year or so time. We cannot compete with these other areas where they do free parking. The free parking has been our blood. It's been our heart. It's been pumping pumping the town with what it needed. I think this is a big mistake, and I would ask the portfolio holder to reconsider and give it more sufficient consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Right, the last of the three people who have recommended to speak is David Russell. After that, I have got two members of the panel who've asked to speak. So first of all, David Russell, you're on hand to speak, please.
Yes, Chairman, thank you for giving me this time to speak. I don't wish to repeat the three councillors who've spoken before me to go on about that we've got dialysis machines in doctors' surgeries, but we also have the civic centre, and in our civic centre we have a local presence for New Forest services. So people go into our car parks to use the New Forest services, so we'll be charging them, or the New Forest will be charging their residents to be able to pay their bills, collect refuse sacks and other things they need within the town. And it has been suggested that we should consider having a certain amount of time being free. And my thoughts are that we should be given something like half an hour free time for the businesses in the Westfield car park area, because that, unlike the other areas, in our War Memorial car park, which is a pattern run car park, we are currently going to be operating it free. We intend to pay. So it would be quite nice if the district council was to give our Westfield car park a certain amount of parking free. That would alleviate some of the problems which have been caused by shoppers parking for a lot longer than is required. As you've rightly been pointed out, it does take a considerable time. And I'm one of the very fortunate people who regularly walk in from West Hoffman into town and do my shopping, and I have to do it the furthest point away, because that's probably one of the cheaper shops. So I am aware of this. All I'm asking, can the portfolio reconsider it? Because we do have the unique challenge that we've got Romsey, the Test Valley district area, and we've got Southampton, which are vying for our businesses. I don't wish that any of our shops which we currently have are forced to close because of the short-term necessity that you've asked us to make all our customers pay. And I'm hoping that the portfolio holder will reconsider, having heard three good speeches and my appalling one. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Right, well, those are the three individuals who had particularly asked to speak, who are members of the panel. I'm now going to open it to members of the panel. I already have three on my list, so taking them in order of notice. Councillor Anne Bellows first, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I support the portfolio holder's decision or proposal. I think Totton has been lucky to have free parking, because this is not the case, as was mentioned, within the New Forest area, including where I'm a ward councillor, which is Fordingbridge. Now, the people of Totton, I think, might feel they're unique, but we all feel we're unique, and we have a problem with our high street being empty, and people go to, there's various supermarkets around us where people go because they can park for free and they can do a lot of shopping there. So I think it's a very unfair system, because it would either have to be free right across the New Forest, or which would cost obviously the council a lot of money, or none at all. I don't think it's fair to have one town that thinks it's unique enough to have some free parking. And that's just my feeling on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you very much. Next person who asked to speak, Councillor Derek Tipp, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I lived outside of Totton, and I use Totton quite a lot, so I do know Totton quite well. Currently, you can go into Totton and you can park free at the Asda supermarket, the Lidl supermarket, and the precinct centre. Those car parks are all privately owned, but they are available to any shopper. And sometimes you can park in Asda and you can nip across to the precinct, or vice versa. So I think that there is plenty of free parking. There is this slight problem of the Westfield precinct, because that is slightly out of the town centre, and I can see why the pet store might have made that case. But as the previous councillor, Anne Bellows, said in her speech, it would be unfair to single out perhaps. You can't make an exception like that without causing a load of other people to say the same thing. So that is the dilemma, and that's why I'm supporting the portfolio holder's decision this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Next speaker is Councillor Malcolm Wade, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, well, actually, I've got a somewhat different view to the previous two councillors. Because at the moment, these car parks are free to the people of Totton. Now, if we put charges into them, they won't know which council paid for them before, or which one. People just know about the council. But let's look at it. We mentioned in the previous item, we talked about waste, and we agreed that one size does not fit all. Totton is very different to our other communities. And I think we should pay tribute to Councillor Rackham for calling this in, because we should be listening to the people. And now, when there's a pandemic, when we have businesses disintegrating about our eyes because of the situation that we're in, we're talking about bringing in extra charges. Are we blind to what's going on around us? Are we ignoring the difficult situation this country's in? We need to be looking at any way we can to help and support the businesses in our town, and to help the workers who work in that town, and to help our residents who visit them, not providing them with extra cost. Now, I'm not a Totton councillor, so I haven't got a personal act to go on, but I think that we should be listening to the people, not making arbitrary decisions like this. Realistically, the local members, understandably, do not want to have their car parks now charged for. I understand that, but we're in the centre of a national crisis. At the very least, you could take her suggestion, Councillor Rackham's suggestion, of giving the first 2 hours free. At the very least, because of the circumstances we as a nation, our businesses are in, our retail industry's in, and our people, residents are in. And I think that this is an almost unthought out decision, and I agree that this should go back to the portfolio, and they should think again, either make them free or at the very least give them the 2 hours that Councillor Rackham suggested, because we want to be seen to be doing something to help our communities, our businesses in this time of crisis, not putting the boot in when we're just to get a few extra cash, because if the businesses go down, no one will be using the car park anyway, and we won't be getting the revenue. So let's think sensibly, sensitively about this and revisit this decision, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wade. Next on the list I've got is Councillor Sue Bennison, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I too am a regular user of Totton's facilities. I use the Asda car park. I use the free car park that's outside the row of houses a bit further down. I think it's Southampton Road, where Aldi is and the pet shop there. I believe I'm correct in saying that the Civic Centre car park, as you enter it, the area to the left is owned by the town council, and that will remain presumably as free car parking. If I'm correct in that, then I think the other car parks that are in the ownership of the district council should be the same as all other car parks across the forest. I really can't see why we should single out one area to where the district council has a different charging or no charging system to the rest of the New Forest. I think this would be a step which would be challenged by other towns who say, well, we want to have this car park free as well. So I will be supporting the portfolio holders' recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Benson. Next on the list I have is Councillor Andrew Gossage, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure all of us have been around long enough to understand that there is no such thing as a free lunch. I would suggest that there's perhaps the same thing. There is no such thing as free car parking. We have a situation, certainly that Totton and Ealing Town Council should be thanked for by the people that have used the car parks there, because they've been paying £28,000 for a number of years, which of course just covers the business rates cost. The issue of free parking might be divided down as to whether the council pays to provide the service or whether the individual pays to use the service. So you may pay per use, or you may choose to pay through your council tax. If you go into a New Forest District car park in Lymington, you will not only pay per use, whether that's through the machine or in your parking clock, but you'll also pay through your council tax. If you park in a car park currently in Windsor Road in Totton, you will pay through your council tax, but you won't pay per use, which seems a little bit inequitable to me from across the district. Because that means, and I've just looked up the figures for populations, the 29,000 residents of Totton and those others that use it currently only pay for the parking through their council tax, but the remaining 150,000 residents in the New Forest District Council pay twice, because they pay for the New Forest District Council council tax and they also pay per use, which I think is maybe a little inequitable. I'd just like to highlight the issue we have in Lymington, and that is that at the moment there is an issue with on-street car parking and off-street car parking, and indeed because NFDC are now changing the principle of the agreement that they have with Hampshire County Council, we are now going to face the prospect of having to pay for on-street parking as well as off-street parking. So we're being caught left-right, which is not terribly helpful, and I'm sure the good folk of Lymington and Pennington would resent slightly therefore the fact that those good fellows in Totton get free parking. And just finally to say that Town Council do, I know, try and make the best of what they can for their residents, and indeed the Lymington Pennington Town Council pay £16,000 a year to provide a Saturday bus service to alleviate car parking issues in the High Street. So in all, I think on review and looking over the whole thing, I would support the portfolio holder in his decision to make the situation more equitable across the district. Thanks very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Andrew. Next on the list I've got is Councillor Alan Glass, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very similar point, really. As we say, there is no such thing as free parking. Totton pays the business rates. The maintenance has to be paid for, so NFDC pick it up. That's everyone in the New Forest pays a little bit towards it. The operating costs have to be paid for, NFDC again. The residents pay for the rates, yes, whether they've got a car or not. Is that fair at all? Should you pay for the car park if you haven't got a car? I think to make the people with a car pay for their car the same as anyone else in the New Forest is the right thing to do, and I support the portfolio holder. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Alan. Next to speak, please, is Councillor Anne Bellers again, please.
Thank you. Yeah, firstly, I agree with Andrew Gossard and with Councillor Glass, because they were points that I was going to bring up. Also earlier, Councillor Malcolm Wade mentioned bringing in extra charges at this time. Surely it's reinstating charges, not bringing in extra charges. Also, people will still come to shop in Totton. They may not like it at first, but they will accept it eventually. I have a parking clock, and I find that that is the solution for all. Perhaps the money-grabbing supermarkets ought to be lobbied to enable their staff to park in their car parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. And finally on the list at the moment, Councillor Neville Penman, you wish to speak again, please?
Yes, please. I don't think that my fellow councillors have actually got the message. We actually negotiated with NFDC to pay £28,000. They were happy with that. So at the end of the day, that's exactly what we paid. It wasn't free. Well, it wasn't free. We actually paid New Forest District Council. That's what was negotiated, and that's what we paid. And as far as reinstated, we weren't getting anything for nothing. We were paying, and that's something you must please remember. So our residents in Totton have had that for 15 years. They're happy with that. They come into the town. In these bad periods from COVID, you're looking at difficult times. And I have to agree with Malcolm Wade. We should be looked at differently. We don't mind subsidising. I'm not saying we need every car park. We've had two very good businesses that bring other services into our town that went into empty premises that have been empty for over 2 years because the car park was free. If we had 5 or 6 spaces that were free for 30 minutes so that the customers that come from all over the New Forest, your areas and other areas could come, go into the shop, get what they need and then back to their vehicle. They have to carry heavy frozen products. So they can't park over in the free car park, which is the Memorial Car Park. We are different than any other town. And I fully understand the majority has to take the vote, but you must look at this very differently. Thank you very much indeed, Chairman, for letting me.
Okay, Neville, thank you very much. I was going to bring in the portfolio holder just at this minute, but one further person has asked to speak beforehand, and that's Councillor Stephanie Osborne. You want to say another word?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I just want to say that I'm totally against bringing in charges, especially at this time of recovery for people. Well, we hope we're recovering, don't we? I think sometimes we have to look at the cost, you know, knowing the cost of everything, but not the value of everything. The value of people. Totton was a pretty miserable place 10, 15 years ago, as Councillor Penman said. It is now a place that is actually quite pleasant to go to, but I must admit, coming, you know, not from Totton, when I go to Totton, I love it because you can park for free. I'm also very aware that Asda don't like people parking in there and going shopping around the rest of the village, so it is a case of moving your car. Totton is congested. And I also quite concerned about where the commuters and the people who work in the businesses are going to park with all this charging and time limits and things. Life is stressful enough as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Right, well, that's everybody on my list who wished to speak, and I think this is now an opportune moment for Councillor Edward Heron, the portfolio holder, to wind up this discussion.
Chairman, just before you introduced Edward, could I just have a quick word?
Yes, okay, Councillor Bennett.
I did put an RTS up.
Yeah, I'm looking. It's playing up at the moment. You're not on there, but okay. Please do.
Very, very quickly. I just wanted to say, with regard to the Asda car park, I think they say limited to 2 hours, I think, which would give most people a chance to go somewhere else and pick up some small thing. The other thing I wanted to say was I have never bought a parking clock because of the very reason that Totton has free car parking. So I think I will be one of those people who will now purchase a clock, in which case I can then go in various other car parks throughout the forest with my parking clock. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, you can. And I believe one of the other members of this meeting has said that there is a notice in the Asda car park which says that you shouldn't leave. If you're going to go shop elsewhere, you should take your car with you. Anyway, right, everybody's spoken that's listed to speak, so can I now refer to...
Sorry, can I come back? I have RTS'd a couple of times.
Let me have a look, see. Yeah, it's playing up, but Caroline, please do.
Thank you. There were a few points that I just wanted to come back on, actually. So one is about the fact that the Memorial car park next to the NFDC one is free and it's a town council car park. Of course, as soon as people find that they have to pay for parking, they're going to try and park in that car park. And it's not enough to take the quantity of traffic, if you like, from all of the other car parks. So obviously, that's not going to be enough to satisfy the need. The other thing, there was the comment about Asda, which Asda actually now will issue you a ticket if you park for longer than, I believe it is 2 hours. So obviously for a lot of people that's an issue. And yes, absolutely, this is inequitable across the forest. And that simply is because every town is different and every town needs to be considered differently. And what's wrong for Lymington doesn't mean it's right for Totton, and what's wrong for Totton isn't right for Lymington, but we have to look at each town individually and not assume that every town has the same issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Sorry I didn't pick it up earlier, but it's been playing. Anyway, you've slotted in comfortably, I hope. Right, I have nobody else listed to speak. Am I right? Anybody just a last minute? Seems that Councillor Arthur Davis is typing a message. You agree? Okay. Fine. In that case, Edward, Councillor Edward Hedden, portfolio holder. Edward, would you like to wrap up the discussion, please?
Good afternoon, Chairman and members, and thank you. And I have taken great interest in listening to the passionate arguments from all members in this debate, and I do fully appreciate the views of those members of Totton and the surrounding areas. If you'll allow me to digress a moment, member, I first became involved in politics when a previous Liberal Democrat or administration brought parking charges in across the forest. And I attended many public meetings about that, and notably remember a lively one in the old town hall at Ringwood. And again, I remember the impassioned debate when a Conservative administration brought back in a much more sensible and proportionate charging system. So I do fully understand the passion and the care for the community that the members bring to this debate. Having said that, there are a few discrepancies that concern me, and I think one of them is the views that some members have expressed in this forum against parking charges, but then at the same time in other forums talk about the importance of discouraging car travel and incentivising other forms of travel. And, you know, I appreciate that bus services are never what we would all want, and walking is never the first option when you have shopping, and sometimes not practical with large amounts. But I do feel that having free parking is one of the least environmentally friendly things that a community could do. Chairman, we've heard much about why Totton is unique, and I completely agree, Totton is unique. But then each and every one of our communities within the forest could point at reasons why they too are unique, and they are. And that is the great benefit of our district, is that we are a district which has, while shares so much, also brings our unique characteristics. But it also needs to be equitable. And Councillor Penman talked about the fact that Totton Town Council has chosen to cover the business rates for 15 years, and that is true. I would highlight that actually it was Totton Town Council that chose to withdraw from that agreement, and I understand that we're still chasing the money for the last year that they've been free. But Chairman, I think it is equally true, regardless, that we should be looking at this again given our requirement to promote sustainability and the fact that over those 15 years this district has foregone nearly £1 million in lost income from that arrangement. Chairman, I would hold out, but if in the times it takes for us to advertise, Totton Town Council wish to come back and offer the £80,000 to make up the lost revenue, then I would certainly be willing to look again at this arrangement. But I do not believe that every other community within this forest should contribute the parking charges towards the cost of the council providing the services and not Totton. Chairman, I also understand the arguments about businesses competing. I do fully understand about Totton competing with Southampton and Romsey, but then so does New Milton with Christchurch, Ringwood with Bournemouth and the free parking at Castle Point, or Fordingbridge with Salisbury. We are all in a difficult environment, and that is why I think that our parking clock, which is available to residents and non-residents, and which offers free parking for 3 hours, and bear in mind if you were to use that to go shopping but once a week, that would give you a rate of 18 pence per hour to park. I do not believe that 18 pence an hour would be a disincentive to those who genuinely wish to park. And while there are some examples of where there's some free parking, to be honest, the vast majority of parking today is not free. And I would say to those businesses that look at others that have free parking where they are based, again, it is not free. If you would like to look at the rents chargeable for those businesses, those business premises that have parking available, generally it is the business that pays the parking, not the customer. Chairman, I've heard the debate today, and I must say that I have not heard anything to my mind that would make me revisit the decision that I have taken. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Heron. Right to panel. You've heard everything that's been said by all those who have a wish to speak to this panel to consider whether the decision by the portfolio holder was within the council's policy and budget, and that in essence is what we are discussing here. However, I'm going to ask now if the panel agrees that the decision taken by the portfolio holder is within the council's policy and budget, and confirm your agreement to it. And I will ask for a consensus. So those people on the panel who do not agree with that, would they kindly list on the conversation panel to let me know? There are 8 members of the panel still remaining at this meeting. I have currently got 2 who disagree. That's Councillor Malcolm Wade and Councillor Stephanie Osborne. Our final request, is there anyone else who wishes to disagree with our decision as a panel? And nobody's coming in. So with 8 members of the panel remaining and 2 giving their disagreement by consensus, therefore there is a significant majority in saying that this decision is within the council's policy and budget, and therefore we approve it as an action and that no call-in is otherwise necessary. Is that, Karen, is that sufficient for your minutes?
There's the other point is just for members to note that a report will need to go to the leader and to the council, and views will be expressed within that report from the meeting today.
Oh, that's fine. Okay, yes indeed, and I'm sure members have heard that. So the points made will be transmitted to the leader of the council. Right.
Chairman,
yes?
It's Neville. Sorry, before you can I thank you very much indeed for giving us the opportunity to put our point across.
It's a pleasure, Neville. Whoever anybody is, if they wish to speak at this committee, then they certainly can. And I bar nobody from coming along and giving their views so we get a full picture of everybody involved. And I thank you and your colleagues for the work you've done on their behalf.
I fully concur with Neville. Thank you very much, Chairman, for allowing us to speak.
Thank you, Arthur. It's been a pleasure. And you've been a very well-behaved crowd, can I say that?
Thank you.
Anyway, right.
Can I just give one more comment, please?
Yes, Karen, please do.
Within, I should have said before, within 2.5, which is within the recommendation as well, it does say in B, if it was within the Council's policy and budget, and the panel should just consider whether the policy or budget should be reviewed. So can we just seek some views on that?
Yes, okay. Whilst all members are available to do so, the 8 left. I think that the first decision we just made actually confirms that to a certain extent. But I put the question to the panel in that case as to whether they consider the policy or budget should be reviewed. There are 8 members of the panel left. I'll assume that we are in agreement with that statement.
Chairman, I've got an RTS.
Unless you RTS. Malcolm, Councillor
you've asked a question, and no one would expect us to blindly answer it without making a comment. Clearly, we are in a different time. We are going through a different time because of the pandemic. No one can bury one's head in the sand. And it was very interesting to hear Councillor Heron talk about the old days when we had parking charges. What he forgot to mention, we gave everybody a free pass. Whereas when they brought the car charging back, everyone had to pay. Small fact he must have forgotten about in the depths of time. I think we should consider looking at parking charges across the district. I represent Hythe and Dibden, and we have two car parks there. In fact, you sold off. We have 3, but you sold one off, and we never got any money for that. So I actually think that you should look at individual places in this time of the pandemic and looking at a more realistic and more sensitive way how we deal with it, because this isn't going to get any better for us, and we need to think how we can support businesses in Hythe and Dibden across the forest, and how we can anything we can do. And if reducing car parking charges, giving 2 hours free or whatever helps that, we should consider it. Therefore, I think we should look at it again. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Malcolm. I suggest, as this actually isn't part of this special meeting, that you would bring that up with the portfolio holder in private to see whether it comes up at a different time. But I'm sure he'll take on board your words. Thank you very much. Right, as I haven't received any other disagreements or comments, that item B then, the policy and the budget, is not in need of reviewing by this panel at this stage. Right, the final part of the agenda, item 5, any other items that Chairman decides are urgent? No, I haven't. So I thank you all very much for the meeting. It's been an extremely interesting one, and I've enjoyed chairing it. So thank you very much, and well, take care, everybody, and goodbye for now. But Karen, could I ask you to stay on for a second? I need a quick word.